Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. I am so excited today because I have a guest that's come on, and he is a talk show host and spiritual mentor to many people in my area and abroad. His name is Bernard Alvarez. He is the talk show host here on Revolution Radio right prior to my show, and he's going to talk to us today about global awakening. And in the second half of the show, he's going to share some of his personal stories and those of some of his clients, anonymously, of course, about their experiences of awakening, and then share with us some techniques so that we can expedite our awakening or weather our awakening a little bit easier. Welcome, Bernard.
Hello, Tracy. Thank you for having me today. What a pleasure.
You are most welcome, and I'm so tickled to have you. For those of you that are not familiar with Bernard, I wanted to tell you a little bit about him. He has been a spiritual teacher and intuitive for over 2 decades. That's a nice way of saying 20 years. And he has counseled thousands of people around the world, guiding them to greater insight and a renewed sense of purpose. He is a certified Reiki master. He is an ordained minister and a doctor of metaphysics. And he has a book that he's written. He is the author of the Book of One, and has published hundreds of spiritual teaching videos, has appeared in documentaries, television, and radio show. He has a background in philosophy, healing, mysticism, and metaphysics, and offers spiritual and intuitive mentoring and counseling on one's higher self. And he loves to talk about the soul's journey and path to divine awareness. And I really feel fortunate to have him on our show. As a medium, I've learned that our state of beings offers us a different perspective. And so today he's going to talk to us from a global perspective. And Bernard, I have clients sometimes coming to me and they're sort of freaking out because opening up, they can suddenly see, hear, feel both dimensions. You're saying that there is a global phenomenon going on. When did you first become aware that there was a global awakening?
That's a wonderful question in the sense that for me, it came in 2 parts. I feel that in my experience, my first awakening was more of spiritual. I found myself, as a child doing intuitive readings for people and dowsing. Before I even knew what dowsing was, I found my lost puppy by utilizing a pendulum, and my parents were like flabbergasted. They couldn't believe I did that.
Too cool.
Before puberty, I was doing this. And my main spiritual awakening happened literally in 1992 during my shamanic experience, which is what the Book of One is all about and covers all the information I received. Now, as far as trying to put it all together, I didn't really quite notice the whole picture probably until about 2005, 2006, which is when my awareness expanded away from my personal life and began to include all life on the planet. And to have that global consciousness was really what made it the awakening to me.
Yeah, I think as our souls open up to things beyond and we start balancing the energies inside of us and then how that relates to other people, we do expand. But how did you know, is it really true that it is a global phenomenon? You know, is this something new that's going on?
I think it's fair to say that this cycle of awakening is fairly recent, and can say that, okay, the indigo kids are growing up, or the rainbow children are incarnating, or whatever it is, those of us who have come on the planet to help shake things up and put us back on track. But for me, I really saw a lot of evidence after my quote-unquote global awakening in 2005, 2006, where I was feeling very much alone. And little by little, I started meeting people through the internet. Thank you, Internet. through MySpace. Remember MySpace?
Yeah, I was just thinking of that the other day. I was like, what was the name of that? Yeah.
And through MySpace, I was meeting people, from Croatia, from Japan, from Australia, from England, and everyone saying and feeling the same things that I was feeling and thinking. That awareness that our world has been hijacked, for lack of a better term, by psychopathic political leaders that really do not care for the well-being of humanity and only care about profit, as well as having psychic awakenings where people are becoming more intuitive and having out of body experiences or seeing spirits or having psychic phenomenon happening in their life out of nowhere. These new traits started happening with people and made people a little shocked and a little scared. And with that is why I started the Global Illumination Council back then, as a place for those who were going through this awakening that didn't quite know what was going on, to have a place, a community, an online community, to meet other people that were going through the same thing. As far as with the media, as far as evidence, I will say, like mainstream evidence, for lack of a better term, we're seeing it all around the world in global uprisings, especially throughout Europe and Greece and Turkey and Egypt. And the people have had it. They're fed up. Enough is enough. They don't want the global banks in their business. They want to create a new monetary system. They want to create a new way of being with each other as a community. And we even saw a little hint of it here in the United States with the Occupy movement.
Yes.
We are seeing it. People are shifting, and they're seeing a new way of being.
Yeah. I think that you mentioned your awakening happening earlier. I think there are those of us or others that have gone before us that are sort of the way showers, the ones that fly lead in the flock of birds, at least for a while, to try to show the way and set the path. And I see that in you. I see that consciousness at such a high level. I know you personally, and I have appreciated your work. Do you think there was a shift that actually happened at 2012? I know when it was being talked about, I was going through my own figuring out titles for what it was that I did, and I thought it was interesting, like, oh, the shift, yeah. What do you think about that?
I most certainly believe 2012 was a pivotal point in many ways, in very positive ways as well. As far as the idea of the Mayan calendar, which is where this comes from,
Mm-hmm.
we have to understand that the winter solstice of 2012 marked the end of a 28,000 year calendar.
Yeah,
And what that calendar represents is the Milky Way going through the constellations of astrology. So it had made its way around the universe, so to speak.
that is so clearly put. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that. And what happened was, at that time, is the solar system is in alignment with the center of the galaxy, so to speak. So there was a major alignment on that day, which I firmly believe that universal energies can amplify or de-amplify our being. So there were many internal changes going on with many people, especially those who are highly sensitive. On the other aspect, I found that the 2012 was also a great cleansing. And what I mean by that is we had an uproar of charlatans prior to that, whether they be New Age charlatans, whether they be political charlatans,
So
whether
look at me, gurus.
you know,
Yeah.
all the ones making money off of this.
Mhm.
So many people were profiting off this 2012 fear porn, I call it. All the fear. And what happened when nothing happened? Let's say, we saw many of those people kind of drift away. We stopped hearing so much about the Alex Joneses of the world, or these, right wing crazy people that were like putting all this fear into everybody. That seemed to have died down quite a bit. A lot. Same with these new age folks that were, saying this is going to happen, and it never happened. Well, what did happen? many people were very disenchanted. They said, well, why didn't we have the 3 days of darkness?
Right.
Why didn't the world just, get destroyed? Why weren't we hit by a meteor or something? And we're about to deal with that tomorrow, by the way. And if anybody's paying attention to the fear porn out there, another right-wing conspiracy person is saying tomorrow's the end of the world. So we have that going again. We'll see more of those morons disappear.
See you day after.
Yeah, we'll see you the day after. But what happened on 2012 is we have to understand it from the cosmic aspect. And if anybody has studied the Hindu yugas, we're working our way back up to what is called the Golden Age. And
I wanted you to tell us a little bit about that because I've heard the term. Explain.
yes, we've all heard of Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and whatnot. And these really don't have anything to do with the actual ore.
Right, right.
It's symbolic. The metal that is associated with that age is merely symbolic, and it really has to do with the alchemy of humanity and what does an alchemist do? The alchemist turns lead into gold.
Mm.
And as we're moving through these cycles, and many of them are lasting 2,000, 5,000 years, depending on the calendar that you follow, what we see in many of the native indigenous traditions are these cycles of ascending order leading to, the top of the circle, which is the golden age. Now, did we have a dark age? Yes, we did. That we were at the bottom 100 years ago, several thousand years ago. And now we're working our way back up to the top. The one thing that people seem to get frustrated with is that the golden age is not next year. It's not now.
Right.
Some people who are experts in this, and I'm not one to say I'm an expert, many of them have said the golden ages could be in 500 years or it could be in 2,000 years. But the good news is that we're going on the upswing. And for me, that is why we seem to be seeing so much of this global spontaneous awakening, the spiritual awakening, this geopolitical awakening, the stripping away of the old seems to be happening with so many people around the world. And this is the time that we're going to see that.
You're talking about universal events and cosmic aspects, and maybe some of the people that are listening are like, yeah, why would that affect me? But had they listened to your previous show when you were interviewing Selena Fox, that connection to nature, we are natural creatures. We are affected by the element. The moon affects us, the tides affect us, light and day affect us, the seasons affect us, they affect the nutrients in our bodies. We're very natural creatures, but we forget that in this busy workaday world.
Absolutely. When we talk about the elements of nature, earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, and I get people that are like, well, that has nothing to do with me. And I say, well, think about it. We have earth. Your body is made of carbon and silicone and all these other wonderful earthly things that are all
Yes.
over the earth. So we are carbon based like the earth. So there's the earth. We
Hmm.
have air. We have to have oxygen pumping through our lungs and through our blood in order to survive. We have fire because we emanate heat naturally. I mean, 98.6, that's not very cold. That's pretty warm.
Right, right.
We're fairly fiery creatures. And then, of course, water. We are made up of a very, very large percentage of water. You strip away everything else, and the liquid within us, whether it be mucus, blood, or urine, or whatever, we are filled with water. So,
Yes.
and then, of course, last but not least, is our spirit, our beingness.
Well, what is this ascension exactly? And how would you know you're going through an awakening? I guess I want to ask. How do you know?
Maybe the question should be, when do you know?
Okay, right, right.
No. Well, the ascension question and the awakening question are two different aspects of it to me.
Yes.
For me, let me just touch on this idea that everyone's talking about, the ascension. I get very concerned when I hear people promoting ascension and sharing thoughts on
And
ascension.
by ascension, what do you exactly mean? Are you talking like the rapture
Well, that's
or
why I get
aliens or
concerned. I've
what are you talking about?
I've heard everything from people being sucked up into a mothership. I've heard everything from the rapture type thing, splitting into other parallel dimensions and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
I think I would probably align with the parallel dimension more than I would the other
Much
two.
more easily, yes.
Yes. It's like I'm vibrating so high that I'm on another
You
dimension.
can't see me.
I, I like the Celestine prophecy. He talks about that
Yes.
where they vibrate at such a high level they can no longer be seen by the bad guys, the low vibration people.
Uh-huh.
But the ascension to me is ongoing. It is about vibration. Where we living vibration wise, there's been a lot of work being done with the resonance of the earth. If we talk about the frequency of vibration of the planet, there's been a lot of study recently showing that the earth is vibrating faster. And I forgot who was the gentleman. It was a physicist who said, due to the rapid vibration, the increasing vibration of the planet, we are no longer living in the third dimension. We are now living in the third and a half dimension.
Ah,
If we were to align the ascension process with elevating to higher dimensions, we're looking at the fourth dimension being less physical and more mental, emotional, less tangible, and much more metaphysical, really, quite
yes,
honestly.
yeah.
And of course, higher and higher as we evolve. So to me, the ascension process is merely the awakening process, maintaining a higher vibration
Mm.
and living in that higher vibration.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, and I was thinking, sorry,
yeah.
this ran through my mind as we hone our skills at connecting with those other dimensions through meditation, through reflection, through practices. I feel like we do connect with those. It's almost like we don't have to wait for us to get there because we can perceive it
Hmm.
where we are. So, what are some of the signs that you would quantify awakening
Mm,
by?
there's a lot of them.
Okay.
I feel that the first one I will say, and it's probably the main one, is people think they're going crazy.
Yes.
That's the one I hear the most. People will write me. I went through the same thing. Am I going crazy? I can't believe anything in the news anymore. I can't believe the way that my neighbors are behaving with one another. I can't believe how, people are treating each other. Am I going crazy? I don't want to be in this world anymore. So
Yes.
that feeling
Yeah.
I understand now, and now that I understand, I think that I'm going crazy. So that's the main one. A lot of people think they're going crazy.
Yeah.
You're not going crazy, you're awakening.
Well, it's a shift in perception which
Yes.
affects our sense of reality.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Again, another symptom is losing trust in one's leaders is a very, very big one. When you come to the point where you don't feel you can trust what your government is telling you. And we're seeing that globally now.
Yeah.
So
No
we're seeing
more.
a global shift
Yeah.
happening
The
thanks to,
sheeple are waking up.
yeah, kind of like, thanks to like Snowden and WikiLeaks and Chelsea Manning, we're seeing that on a global scale. But
Mm.
for many people, it just happens very spontaneously. One day they wake up and they're like, why do I feel like that person is lying to me on
Yeah.
television? So they get to see through the mundane. They're seeing through the veil of that.
Seeing through the mundane.
Yes. Another main symptom, a very, very common one, is having lucid dreaming. A lot of people begin to have lucid dreams.
When you say lucid dreams, you're talking about dreams you remember or that seem more significant or that you can create change within. What do you mean by lucid?
Well, a lucid dream, and my interpretation or my definition of a lucid dream, is a dream where you're in control of it, where you're very physical, you're very there, it doesn't move you around, you move through the dream. And many of them, I find, if any listeners are out there, you might be going through this. Many people are having lucid dreams of apocalyptic scenarios. And that's a very common theme. I went through it for about 10 years. I had apocalyptic dreams, very lucid, very real. Another sign of a lucid dream is, waking up, going back to sleep, and picking up where you left off in the dream, which is
Yes.
very frustrating sometimes when you don't want to go back to that dream.
It's like, come back till you get
But
it.
other quick symptoms, a lot of people are seeing numeral flashes of numbers. 1111 is a big one. Everyone's seeing 1111. A lot of people are starting to see 1111. They look at the clock, it's 1111. They drive by an address, it's 1111. 1111 gateway number. Other ones are waking up in the middle of the night. For some reason, people wake up between 2 and 4 during this
Yes.
process.
Yeah, I've heard
So,
at one point, I don't know who told me, but that the veil between the worlds is thinner at 3 a.m.
mhm.
So that's
And
interesting.
we seem to be waking, many of us who are going through the process are waking up between 2 and 4. I'm still one of them, and it really bothers me.
No doubt. What are some of the more difficult obstacles that people are facing when they go through this? Or you've listed some things that were going on, and I didn't mean to
No, no, no.
divert you. I just am curious about that.
Well, I would say the number one issue with people, the number one obstacle is feeling alone. Many people come to me that they can't speak to their husband or wife or their friends, or they just feel very sense of, I don't want to say sad solitude, but being like abandoned, being
Yeah.
alone, that there's nobody that understands them, what they're going through, that no one understands
Mhm.
what they're going through. And it can be compounded day to day where people leave their jobs because they just can't see themselves working for, Wells Fargo, so to speak,
Yeah.
or I can't do this. It's breaking my heart. So I would say the number one thing I feel is feeling of being alone, that you are going crazy, that you can't tell your partner, you can't tell anybody about it. You can't really go to a counselor or a psychiatrist and talk to them about it. You can't talk to your boss about it. You
Yeah,
can't
it's
talk,
just not in the mainstream dialogue.
right? you know, that would be the number one thing. And then, of course, would be the whole thing of trying to find your footing. And what I mean by trying to find your footing is, okay, well, I can't work for a corporation. I can't. I won't. I just
Uh-huh.
can't do that. I belong to a mainstream political party. I can't. I just won't do that. I can't belong to a mainstream religion. I just can't. I won't do that. So where do you go when you
Right.
find yourself losing all faith in everything you've ever known yourself to be? It's literally an identity crisis for many people. So that
Yeah.
would be a big issue.
Yeah, and I'm sure you see this too with people that when they're feeling that way, they have such a desire to do something that is meaningful.
Yes, yes.
What can people do to sort of relax or ease that process, and how do you help them?
Well, the first thing I would say is learn to meditate.
Yes.
Take a breath. You would be surprised how many people don't know to literally just take a breath. I had a client the other day that I taught her a simple technique of taking 3 breaths in through your nose, filling your belly, releasing it out, and doing that 3 times. I called it 3 times 3. Take 3 deep breaths in through your nose,
Hmm.
filling your belly. And she thought was the most amazing thing. She goes, I never realized I breathe through my mouth. And I was like,
Wow.
wow, I guess a lot of people do breathe through their mouth. They don't realize that we're meant to breathe through our nose. Something as simple as that, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Find community. I think it's very important to find some type of support, whether it's, for me, I ended up getting very, very involved with the Unitarians.
Hmm. Yeah, very
They were the
freaking
closest
much.
thing.
Yes.
It was like that's the closest thing I could find. Getting involved with the pagans because that was the closest thing I could find to what I'm going through. Getting involved with organizations that have a piece of what you're looking for. Because I will say this: one of the things that happened on this journey of awakening is we want it all and we want it now. And it doesn't
Right.
happen that way. We want the whole world to awaken. We want our family to awaken. We want the politicians to awaken. And we want it tomorrow. And it's very frustrating to live like that.
Yeah, I want to interject here that
Yes.
we're approaching the bottom of the hour, and I just wanted to say that you've given us some sort of basic landmarks, but I know when you work one on one with people, it would be very individualized and particular to their situation and going into great depth
Yeah.
about things that are going on for them for their soul journey and their path to divine awareness. I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your book of one. I know you mentioned at the
Mhm.
beginning you've written it and that the book was part like the things that you received. Explain some more there.
Absolutely. I need to read that book more often, actually. As I said, my spiritual awakening kind of happened, evolved throughout my early years, but really climaxed in 1992 during a shamanic vision quest.
For those that might not know, what is a shamanic vision quest?
A shamanic vision quest is the ceremonial use of a hallucinogen to help you, I don't want to say escape your body, to connect with the other realms.
Alcohol, drugs, not that I recommend either. Yes.
Not necessarily
Both will,
alcohol, but
they will open your portal. They do open
uh,
your portal,
yes,
absolutely,
absolutely. And
and
many,
have been used for millennia.
yes, as a matter of fact, it's a little concerning now because we're seeing a lot of ayahuasca tourism. And if you're interested in doing the shamanic vision quest, please make sure it is a reputable and a real shaman who has done the journey and has
Yeah.
had experience. But for me, it was the shamanic vision quest. And yes, it was very ceremonial and whatnot. And that's what the book is about. The book shares the experience of going through the quest, but the messages that I received from these beings that I contacted that presented themselves to me as the emissaries of light.
Mm.
Very interesting. It seems they identified me as one of them, that my soul is one of them. Again, very metaphysical. So the book is the messages that they gave me back in 1992. Now, when I wrote the messages down, I kind of packed them up and put them to the side. Yeah, I would look at them for a little while and whatnot. And then I met a wonderful woman who's a spiritual life coach and studies the, oh geez, what's she's going to kill me. What's the name of the organization and the group? It'll come to me.
It's okay.
Anyway, Reverend Annabelle Montalbano, I started working with her and she said, "You have a book?" I was like, "Yeah, but it's not really a book. It's just messages that I got that I wanted to put into a book." She's like, "Well, what's it about?" I told her all about the emissaries of light. She's like, "Do you still connect with them?" I was like, "Yes, as a matter of fact, they've been spontaneously channeling through me as of recently." This was
Yes.
shortly after my global awakening happened. They started speaking through me again. And I didn't like it, quite honestly. And I kind of put an end to it. I hate to say it.
No,
But
it's okay. It's
I,
interesting that you're mentioning this because our last show that I did was on channeling,
ah,
and it isn't always a pleasant experience at first.
it's
It's a
not.
vibrational, ooh,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's kind of like sleeping and you can't wake up
mm,
sometimes. Like I
for
can
some.
see,
Mhm.
actually in the book, you'll see where there's a part there. I have to laugh because there's a part where they're like, well, it looks like Bernard wants a cigarette, him and his nicotine. And so they let,
They were aware of your physical
it was like, I
needs.
really
Yes.
need a cigarette. What happened was that Annabelle had transcribed everything that they came through. What she did was she asked them to explain the messages they gave me during my vision quest. So
Okay.
they expanded on that. So you'll see the message given to me in 1992, and then on the next page, you'll see their explanation of it 15 years later. So it's a very interesting book, very simple to read. They speak very almost childlike. You'll see where they kind of repeat themselves sometimes. And it was transcribed word for word, so it's kind of like on a fourth grade level the way that they spoke sometimes.
Well, ascended masters can often appear as children,
Yeah,
and also when you have attained a level of sophistication in your development, you don't have the need to impress, you have the need to communicate clearly.
absolutely. And that was actually one of the messages from them was feel the words, don't read the words, don't hear the words. It's intended to be felt because the moment we think it, our ego gets in the way and changes the message.
Yes.
It's about the feeling. And most people that have these types of vision quests will say the same thing. I can't put it in words. Just so profound it can't be put in words.
Yeah, it seems almost disrespectful somehow in a way to try to put it in words because words are so minimalistic.
Yeah, it's so definitive, exactly.
Yeah, I think of the words as the language of the physical plane and emotions and symbols being the higher communication there. So, you have some stories for us today for our tales from the other side. You have some awakening
Oh,
things to share
sure,
with
sure.
us.
Well, a wonderful. I just got to say that I have met the most amazing people since I've started doing this. This is very recent. I've just launched the aspect of me doing spiritual mentoring and spiritual counseling. Prior to that, as you all know, I was the empowerment director of the Global Illumination Council, and now I've just started this aspect of trying to connect with people.
I think it's a perfect fit because of your perspective and because of your broad knowledge that you bring to the table
Oh,
as
thank
well.
you. Thank you. And quite honestly, it was because I was tired of writing 8-page messages on Facebook because people would write me these 3-page messages. I'd be like, you know what? You need to just talk to me.
Yes, yes, yes. Sometimes people will curl a lip at the idea of someone charging for a
Right.
natural gift, but if somebody's good at math, maybe they're a CPA. If somebody's good at painting, they paint a picture. It's energy for energy,
Exactly.
light for light. It has to be a
Absolutely.
balance and it has to be done that way.
And someone has to pay the bills, and I don't have the GIC
Y'all do.
anymore.
We live in the physical world. That's right. That's right. So talk to us.
So, going back to the type of people that I've had clients from England, I've had clients from Croatia,
Mm,
from Egypt, from the South, the deep South, from New York, Canada. And I just got to say, it amazes me the spectrum of people who are going through this awakening. I met a woman, a former police officer who's going through it. I've met a woman who is in her 70s who
wow.
is going through the symptoms and having these symptoms, and now her and her husband are not getting along very well sometimes over it, but she's having these moments of clarity, and it's so wonderful to see that this awakening can happen at any age. It's spontaneous. It
The
just
matrix of diversity.
exactly. Like I said, many of the people are the main concern is dealing with friends and family in the sense many times I have people that want to leave their partner over it because they're not getting along or they're not agreeing, and
It's
that's
like
not
a different language. It's like,
right.
I guess, in the biblical example, the Tower of Babel, where all of a sudden people are speaking different languages.
Right, right.
What do? You go with your own.
Well, yeah, exactly. And of course, my advice is that it's not your responsibility for them to awaken. Did someone wake
That is
you
right.
up?
Right.
Nobody woke me up. It happened
No.
spontaneously, and around the world, it's happening spontaneously. Can you be an example? By all means, be an example. But I have a gentleman that I work with who talks a lot about guides that are coming to him through his dreams and through meditation and how they're nudging him along.
Oh,
And it's
wonderful.
funny because we all kind of resist when we get the message, or, some of us call it the cosmic download, like we're getting all this information.
Yeah, I've heard people call it that.
And
Yes.
this gentleman is like, oh, no, no, but I don't want that. I don't want to have to change my whole life, or anything like that,
Too late.
And there's like a certain resistance, which I can't
Yes.
relate to. I resisted for 10 years after my spiritual awakening, which created a lot of turmoil in my life. And so that would be my one bit of advice is don't resist what's changing, embrace what's changing, and
Yeah.
kind of just gently ease through it because the old saying, what we resist persists.
Yeah. You can shut it down, but to do that, it puts so much pressure because it's just there. It's almost like once you see it, you can't deny that you saw it.
Right. I guess what I feel I need to say at this point is that if you are going through this global awakening, if you are sensing any changes within you, whether it be psychically, whether it be politically, the worst thing, and I've seen this in many, many cases, that anyone can do is A, of course, resisting, but B, not being honest.
Yes. Oh,
don't
yeah.
don't live in what I call cognitive dissonance. If you are unhappy with your job, start looking for another one. If you can no longer work for Wells Fargo, go find another job. If you can no longer deal with being a Republican or a Democrat, leave the
Right.
parties. Spooky ice cream man just came by.
We were talking about him the other day.
Yeah,
It's kind of
you know who I'm
creepy.
talking about,
Yes, I do. Nothing personal, ice cream man.
right?
Just that music.
He plays Christmas music. It's very strange. But if you do not live in cognitive dissonance, please look up the word if you don't know what it means. there's nothing worse you can do than to live outside differently than how you're feeling inside. And I feel that's the most important message that I could leave with anybody on this. I find that many of us still want to be a part of the status quo when we don't feel a part of the status quo. Many of us continue to practice the religion of our parents when we no longer feel an alignment to it. It's almost like, well, it's almost like being in the closet, being gay and being in the closet.
It is in a way, yeah.
Come out of the awakening closet.
Yeah, because if you don't match your government, you don't match a political party, you don't match all the symbols that society has set forth as pillars of existence, and all of a sudden you're finding yourself in the woo-woo category, that would be the derogatory way of talking about what we're discussing today. It is important to be true to yourself, because that internal lie, whoa, yeah.
It will.
And it will out. Truth will out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So embrace it. And maybe you can't talk about it with other people, then find someone you can talk about it with. But don't let your external actions contradict what you're feeling on the inside.
Yeah, I love that. I love that balance. Yes, inside and out. Make your worlds match. And, that's really maybe what you're talking about on a larger scale, too, is that we're matching up our world.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Our worlds.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, it is global. It's getting bigger and bigger. And every day, probably thousands and thousands more around the planet are having the spontaneous shift in consciousness.
Do you have something that you brought today for our listeners that you could maybe share with them, perhaps an exercise, a meditation, anything that might physically help them develop their sense of expansion and ascension and awareness?
Well, I don't have an exercise, but I do have a tip. Yes. And this comes from, you reminded me after this discussion of having the same discussion with a client about how can she tell the difference if she's on the right path or not. What I tell everybody is, if you want to know if you're living in your center, if you're living genuinely, if you're living in integrity, if you're grounded, if you're on the right path, if you're moving forward, the best way to tell is to listen to your body. And what I mean by that is our body is constantly reflecting what's happening inside of us and outside of us. Perfect example. If you're, let's say you're my age, you're in your 40s and you walk into a heavy metal nightclub, your body's going to cringe a little bit. You're going to be like shocked,
Yeah.
Your muscles are going to get tense and whatnot, unless you like that stuff still.
Right.
I liked it when I was 20, but not so much now that I'm 45.
It's not what I play at the house.
But that's what I mean. Listen to your body. Your body will expand and contract accordingly to where you are at. If you find yourself in a situation with a partner or with a neighbor or something, and you're feeling yourself constrict or getting smaller, I would walk away. I walk away. It's like, you know what? This is making me uncomfortable. I can't be myself in this situation. I will walk away. When you are in your truth, when you are speaking your truth, when you are living your truth, you will notice that your shoulders are pulled back a little further, your chest is out a little further, your chin is up a little more, and your voice is not as shaky. You will be in your center. And when we are not in our center, that's where we get that whole need to go back to it. Things happen in our lives to direct us back to our center. When you're unhappy with something, it's to direct you back to your center. It's not the world against you. It's that, okay, I am not in my center. Abraham Hicks calls it the vortex. I call it the center.
Yeah.
You're not in your vortex. When you're not feeling expansive, when you're not feeling chin up and confident about what you're saying and what you're feeling, that is a sign of not being on the right path or not moving in the forward direction, as I like to say it. But listen to your body. Your body will tell you. If you're watching a newscast, if you're watching a television show, if you're hearing a politician, if you're listening to a preacher, whatever it is, your surroundings, your senses will always let you know what's good and what is constricting, what's expansive, what's evolutionary, and what's going to cut you off from your connection with this.
Yes, yeah, the resonance of things. And I really like that. When you were talking, I was thinking, it is an awareness within connecting with what's going on around you, and it is that balance. Yeah, my personal tolerance for dissonance has just nearly disappeared. I joke with people that I'm extroverted recluse. I don't even know if you can be that, but I am. Oh, wow. Well, I really appreciate your joining us today, Bernard. This
Tracy.
was a tremendous honor to have you on my show. It was on my second visit to your show that you suggested maybe I might think this direction, and I will be ever grateful for you pointing me in the right way and my boots laced up right and
Right?
know which buttons to push. Hopefully not other people's buttons. So, but it's an honor to have had you on the show. I appreciate it
Oh,
so much. If you out there would like to connect with Bernard, he is an awesome person. He has a lot of personal integrity. You can find him on his website at bernardalvarez.com or on Facebook at Bernard Alex Alvarez, and on Twitter and YouTube at Just Bernard, which I just love that because there's so much more to you than just Bernard. And I hope that those of you that have listened today have enjoyed our show. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking about why can't you see me? And it was very interesting. Some of the things you said earlier, Bernard, kind of tied into that. I was scribbling down notes. I'm like, oh, yes, the Celestine prophecy. Yes, that in there too. Thank you so much. And I'll be sharing tales from the other side and offering some other things to help build your psychic abilities. I appreciate your joining us today. My website is mediumtracylockwood.com, or you can find me on Facebook at Psychic Medium Tracey Lockwood. And I'd like to leave you with a blessing. May there be peace today within your soul. May you trust that you are exactly where you are meant to be. May you not forget the infinite possibilities that are born of trust in yourself and in others and in the source of our light and love. May you use the gifts that you have received and pass on the love that has been given to you. May you be content with yourself just the way you are. Happiness is there for each and every one. Go in peace. And we'll see you next week for a view of life from a medium's perspective. And it's important for you if you will remember that it is never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing.